Should I just drop everything and market buy the whole market right now? Well, that is the topic of today's video, as we do see a very nice move on Bitcoin, nearly 10% up off the lows, or a little bit more than 10% actually up off the lows. And the question of the day is, are things, reversing here? Is Bitcoin about to go fucking lunar as well as the rest of the markets? Well, I do think that there are several things to be aware of, especially on the higher term timeframes that are still unchanged, to be honest. So first things first, we'll follow up on yesterday's short-term timeframe analysis. If you recall from the end of yesterday's video, we were looking at several drives of divergence building up on timeframes up to a daily here on the daily RSI. We can see definitely higher lows from Tuesday's low on the daily RSI compared to the lows that we saw from February, late February that is, and then early March. So that has now played out. We've got the easy move to the exact target that you typically look for on these sort of divergence plays, which is that yellow moving average right there. And so if you're looking for anything more than that, it's lower probability at this point, not impossible. But as of right now, very little has actually changed. Bitcoin is still within a downtrend. It still has lower lows and lower highs. I'm not saying that can't change, but I cannot change my bias as long as these conditions are not reversed. And of course, this is the same conditions that's been keeping us essentially downside angled, bearish on this channel since the breakdown in late February, where Bitcoin did complete the lower lows and lower highs. And ever since then, we've seen several rallies. We've seen several impressive rallies. I mean, we saw a 21% rally right here. We saw about a 15-16% rally right here. That failed to really obviously materialize into a reversal. So as of now, nothing's actually changed. Anyways, as we get into it, I just want to acknowledge there is neither a higher high nor a higher low. Once we get one of those things, I will entertain the possibilities of, hey, maybe I was wrong about looking for further downside, and we might actually have a reversal. And of course, once both of those things get confirmed, assuming that they do, then I'll fully capitulate on that and I'll just buy higher. That's fine by me. I've already done the buying that I want to do in the 80s and 70s. If I buy again, it's either going to be much higher or much lower, but that's fine. Anyways, at least fine for me. Anyways, to put a number on it, I will maintain a bearish bias as long as Bitcoin is below the last price action pivot right here at about just over $85,000 on spot price action. Or if you want to use CME, which I do think that CME is a better chart to be using for this, the same number would be just around $86,000. So I'd really be waiting for price to close back above there. Then you have a higher high, and then we look for a higher low. But until then, it is still, like I said, a downtrend. And there are several setups brewing in the background right here. Remember, we have a 5-day and 10-day time frame closing later today, and there are some things that I think deserve some recognition. So first things first, I want to call out this, whoops, that's the wrong chart. I want to call out this 10-day time frame right here, which again is closing tonight. We are going to see potentially a major change of behavior that we have not seen since 2022, like the 2022 lows coming in from late October / early November. And this has been creating a nice trendline regression governing all of the macro lows during this current bull market. I'm talking about literally the macro low, then of course the lows in September of 2023, also the lows of September 2024. And as of right now, if things were to close exactly where they're at right now, we will see this trendline regression break, which tells me that something new is going on. And if something's new is going on and the prior thing that was going on was up, then it's probably not up. I'll put it that way, especially as volatility starts to expand here as well from some extreme lows on the 10-day time frame, a very, very high term time frame here. That is also going to be combined with another setup that we did speak about on yesterday's video, which is between the red 5 EMA, this moving average right here, and that yellow 21 EMA. Now, because Bitcoin bounced so much from yesterday's video to where it's at right now, we actually do not see it crossing at this exact moment, but I do suspect when we get the new open later tonight, if Bitcoin fails to continue to the upside from here, we will see that cross officially happen. And the reason why that is relevant, the reason why I'm putting some weight on that is because anytime that we've seen this cross between the red 5 EMA and the yellow 21 EMA, we've seen a minimum target target to the downside of the green moving average, which is a 55, and that is just under 70,000 bucks as of right now. This has worked every time in Bitcoin's history except for once, which was back here, actually last year in August of 2024. It briefly, for one candle, did close below and initiated that cross. Now, to be fair, Bitcoin obviously did have a pretty nasty downside move before then, but yes, if we're going by the book, we expect it to happen after, and that is typically what does happen. And you see several examples over here. Of course, this one over here certainly works. This one over here certainly works as well. This one over here, it's right before the Rona dump. This one over here, coming off the 2019 highs. This one coming off of the 2018 cycle. This one over here coming off of the 2014 cycle twice on the bull trap as well, and even all the way back to the 2011 cycle. So I do put significance on that. Yes, it's not 100% guaranteed to work out, and it's not even confirmed as of right now, but I'd suspect that when we get that next 10-day open, if Bitcoin's, hanging out below $85,000, $86,000, we will see that cross indeed happen, and, the 55 is still lower. So I'd have to say that would still be more likely. So I still maintain that bearish buys, as long as these things are available. That plus the 10-day stochastic momentum trend line, kind of big to me right now as well. And also another thing that makes me very cautious about this current move is due to the April open to low statistics right here. Remember that for any positive closing April, we found that the average differential between the open of the month and the low of the month was only about 3.5% to 4%. In fact, the highest differential that we've ever seen is 6.95%, and usually it's much less than that. Now, I should say that there is one outlier that was literally 2011, where it was a very big difference, about 27.5%, and did still close positively. But to put this into perspective here, when we go back to the monthly, thus far from the open of April to the low of April, we've seen about a 10% downside move. So this would be bigger than any other April that we've seen in Bitcoin's history. If it was going to close positively for this month. Obviously, on the negative side, it's much more than that. But this is just kind of putting puzzle pieces together here. So we've already seen it massively outperform, I suppose, those prior iterations, if you are going to be hoping for a bullish close on this month, or a green close, if you want to call it that. Actually, that would be more accurate, a green or positive closure here. So it's still got a lot of work to do is what I'm saying. Not impossible, but we should now go over reasons for reversal. Like, what would essentially confirm a reversal? We kind of went over a little bit earlier. If you just want a very obvious price action pivot to be going off of, well, I'll just reference the PA pivot indicator right here, and it would be on spot price action a little bit above $85,000. I would give it some room for error there. I'd say maybe even $86,000, and then of course CME, which I do think is a better chart to be going off of in these cases, is going to be pivoted at $86,000. So as long as Bitcoin's below there, you don't have higher highs just yet, and we obviously already do not have higher lows. But there are a few other things that are kind of working in favor, I suppose, of the boo laws here. Like I don't think it's impossible for Bitcoin to reverse here. If we go over momentum oscillators for the lower end of the higher term timeframes, they are starting to turn up once again. We see the daily time frame lifting off here as long as Bitcoin's above $79,000 on a daily closing basis. The 2-day time frame, which I think is closing tonight, indeed it is also, I believe, going to be upside angled. Yes, indeed, it's going to have a chance to really cross the upside here if Bitcoin finishes today above 79,500. The 3-day time frame, I think, is also potentially going to do it. Yeah, the 3-day time frame could also do it. Not closing tonight, by the way. This one's going to close on Saturday night, but the pivot there is 81,750. And then the 5-day and the 10-day, which are closing tonight, these pivots are for the 5-day at 79.5, and the 10-day time frame is probably still going to be massively down, I suspect. So, the very high term timeframes are unchanged here. Yeah, the 10-day time frame coming down hard below $100,000. Again, going over the weekly, also going to be down big. Well, this one's almost had a full reset, or in fact, it has had a full reset. So maybe that will flip around soon too. But the bi-weekly time frame also still massively down. Monthly, we already know, has bearish divergence and down. We've already identified bearish divergence, of course, on the monthly RSI as well, of multiple drives all the way up to a quarterly time frame. So I do think it's going to be a little bit difficult for these lower end of the higher term timeframes to kind of supersede this, but not impossible, I suppose. But I just want to paint the picture that it still has a lot of work to do. But for the people who are looking at the bullish divergence that we identified on yesterday's video, this is already played out, or at least the easy portion of that move is already played out. If you're looking for the next target based off that, it actually would be all the way towards that green moving average, which is a 55 at $86,000. That could have real implications for like an actual reversal. But until that happens, we still have lower lows. We still have lower highs. You're going to hear me belabor that point a million fucking times because I really do think that trend is the penultimate thing to be aware of. And it's what's kept us bearish on the downside here since very late February. And well, when things flip around, well, I'll turn bullish. But until then, not necessarily. And of course, I also want to bring up this as well. We were looking at this on yesterday's video. I'll bring it up again just as a kind of data point here. But the Fibonacci time extension from the ultimate high of the 2021 cycle to the ultimate low of this current cycle still projects a date of something resembling a change in behavior on basically like the last week of this month to the first week of May. Just depends what time frame you're looking at. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you can see that it has matched up very well with decent pivots on the market thus far. It caught the first two major highs right here, caught a major breakout over here, a low, also another local low, and the current basically all-time high as well. So, I do think that we're still waiting until around that date. That would still be about 20-ish days away from now, give or take a little bit from that number. So I would say that, it's hard to say that that's already played out, at least as of right now. It still has another almost 3 weeks. I mean, that's kind of a long time. Anyways, let's get into the last thing. Perhaps let's go check out on the quantum wave bands. How have they done during this move? Did they make any moves in the past 24 hours? And actually, no, since we last showed it, there has not been any new moves made for the settings that I have here. Did do all right with a couple of quick scalps on Wednesday, it looks like, or sorry, Tuesday, and then yes, Wednesday right here, actually. That was very early in the morning, but we already spoke about that on yesterday's video. It hasn't done anything over here. Would have been nice if it caught this upside move, of course, but it's a scalping strategy at the end of the day. Anyways, in case you already haven't done it, you can try this out for free for the first 30 days with the code TRIAL in all capitals. You can also even try out the Quant Prime AI for free with the same code, and also Caretaker's full indicator bundle and the Crown VMP. These are just there for people to try them out and figure out if it's a good fit for you or not. But this service right here, I think, is pretty damn good for newer people, kind of giving you guidelines and obvious indications of when you should be trading compared to other things. The Quant Prime service I cannot recommend to beginners at all. It's going to go much over your head. It'd be better to get your feet wet and get a lot of experience elsewhere first, and then perhaps take advantage of the free trial there, and then maybe you can actually make enough money to keep it on and trade with the bot, which is the way that I do everything except for my long-term investing. But yeah, anyways, I think that is good enough for today's video. This is actually being recorded live on Twitter, and I'm going to continue to do this each and every day for Twitter, just having it live right there. We're not doing like a YouTube live stream where it's like a Q&A and shit like this, but just hanging out, just shooting the shit, talking around, hanging out, and then I record my video, nice and short and sweet, and I'll continue on with that tradition. Of course, tomorrow we actually will have a live stream on YouTube, but for every other day, yeah, this will be the way that we go forwards from here, because it's actually really, really fun. So if that interests you, think about liking and subscribing and joining in on Twitter as well, or X. Anyways, with all of that said, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully in tomorrow's live stream.